Chapter 9 covers matching items. Matchmaker, make me a match. And so we're going to be looking at matching questions in Chapter 9, which is almost halfway through the textbook. So after this chapter, we're going to be on the downhill side of this course. Matching items are used quite a bit in testing. We can use them very, very easily to assess content. Whatever it is we're covering in our course, they work very, very well and adapt themselves to the content that we're utilizing. They're very similar to multiple choice items, where they can assess the knowledge of a subject on the part of our students. They need to know something about it so they can match up the items. It asks students to kind of be able to draw some associations between ideas, to see how they kind of connect together. Now, they will involve selection. Students don't have to supply the answer. Like in the case of a fill in the blank or essay kind of question where we're testing what they know. All they've got to do is be able to choose the right answer. And you want to have some number of alternatives, which we're going to be talking about later on, but you want to have some extras so that the students aren't matching 10 items in one column with 10 items in another column. And they are especially good when you have a lot of possible answers and you don't want to be repetitive. And so matching is a good fit for those kinds of situations right there. And this is what your typical matching question is going to look like. And so they would match the items in column B with those of column A. And so you would just take your answer and write it in the blank. And so it makes it very easy for you to grade them if those were the right answers. But nevertheless, notice how you have 3 items here. You have a total of 5 here. So you've got more than what it takes to get it done. And now we're going to put some terms for the column items. First of all is your premise. It's statements in column A, that's what we've just seen, and we also call them the stem. And then we have our options to match against our premise. It's the response items in column B, and you'll notice that the premise should be to the left of the answer, options to the right. So you want your premise in the left-hand column and your answers to the right. And that's just how we do it. Also, you notice you should have more than one answer than the stems. I certainly have more, I should say more options in the option column than in the stem column. Now, when do you and I want to use these things? Well, when you want to use the same response in more than one question, remember you want multiple choice items to be independent of one another. And so you want to try to keep your matching questions to have one answer to them. You don't want to use more than just one. This practice can threaten the independence of items, and it also can threaten the integrity of your test, because you might build in some bias into the testing situation, and then your matching items can help to remove this bias. And so, some guidelines for writing matching questions. So before you even put anything down on paper, you got to decide right up front whether the matching questions align with the objectives that you and I are trying to get across and get students to understand. And answer the question as to whether you are measuring achievement or knowledge. Now, what's the difference between the two? Well, achievement could be dealing with the mechanics of taking the test. Does the students understand the concepts as well as some of the skills that are inherent to the content? Are we just worried about them scoring high on that test to be able to make a passing grade so they can move on to something else? Or do we want to know what they know? And so we need to kind of understand that up front. And then, are we trying to measure higher level thinking? Well, if that's what we're looking at doing, then probably matching may not be what we want. If we want them to be able to think, then we maybe want to go with a fill in the blank or essay type question that's going to really get us to see what they know and understand. So if you're measuring knowledge and achievement, our first bullet point, then matching items might be appropriate for us. We're not worried about the higher level thinking, and so we can go with that lower level type of approach. Some more guidelines to be able to put together matching items. There ought to be 2 columns, just for the sake of functionality. One for the premise, the other one for the options. And obviously, like we've said before, ought to have more options than stems. And also provide some directions. I can remember growing up, some of our instructors would give us matching items, and we were supposed to draw a line from one of the premises to the options there. And so maybe you just want them to put the letter of the option in the blank that you have in front of the stem. You just need to be able to figure out what's going to work for you and be easy to handle. Now, test takers ought to be able to use options more than once. I don't know if you want to do that, but at least have the option available to them as they go through the STEM questions, that perhaps an answer could be used more than once. At least you keep that possibility open to them. Whether you decide to make that happen or not is really up to you. Your premises and responses should be reasonable. I don't think you want to limit your options and stems to be fairly short sentences, just for lack of space. You don't want them reading a whole lot, and so you want to try to group your your content to kind of be similar in complexity. And finally, your responses should not be listed in the same order as the stems or premises. You know, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down the stem column, and then you go A, B, C, D, E on the options column. You don't want those things to match up one to one. You want them to have to search through one column in the options level to find the right answers. And so try to get yourself some kind of randomness there. And again, try to avoid any patterns like, you know, A, C, B, D, something like that. Or just the opposite. The first question on the stem column will be the last answer on the option column. So try to make it random as much as possible. Your premise ought to contain more words than the option. Your premise, as your book calls it, is the meat of the item. And what you can do is to place the premise in some kind of logical order, whether it's like alphabetical or chronological. I'll be quite honest, I've never used that approach before, and I've never had any problems. But I guess if you were looking at some type of situation where you had some kind of rank order of maybe some kind of task or something like that, where you would want to line up with your options item. Okay, which one would match up with step 1, then step 2, then step 3, 4, all the way down the line. So that might be one situation to do that, but more often than not, I think really for this point right here that the random approach is more fair and equitable and keeps the students on their toes. All your premises and options should appear on the same page. That's just like a no-brainer. You want to make this as simple as they can be for the test taker, so they're not flipping pages or making all kinds of noise or getting lost. The mechanics need to be as simple as possible. You ought to label your columns, column A, column B, column 1, column 2, something like that. And then there ought to be only one correct response. Sometimes this isn't that easy to do. If it's you know, STEM item might have answer A and answer E are awful close or could suffice. Those students are going to find out real quick about it. And so then you wind up going out there and having to take all your tests back and then do some modifications, or else you know, change the grades, which is a big hassle, especially if you have a whole lot of students. And so do some work up on the front end to make sure you don't have those kind of duplicates. And like that, you'll save you some work and some grief on the back end when it's time to grade the test. And this is your table out of your book, 9.1, kind of giving us the advantages and disadvantages of your matching questions. And on the advantage side, they're straightforward and clear in their presentation. They're very simple to make, easy to administer. They can allow you some comparisons between ideas and facts. Your responses are short, easy to read, and the value of guessing is decreased. Since you have more than option items than STEM items, they have to be able to know the information, and their chances for guessing kind of minimize their options of being able to get the question right. Now, on the minus side, your level of knowledge testing is limited. You're kind of left with just only facts, and they can memorize those things. They're all right. There's not a whole lot of deep thought into a matching question. The test can be difficult to machine score. So you may have to make yourself a little answer sheet to fold over there to the side so you can get all of your matching option answers graded there. And the test can emphasize memory. If they just go out there and memorize the information just long enough to be able to match the right answers, then we haven't really accomplished a whole lot, or know exactly how much they know. We do know that they can memorize. And to kind of sum things up, you got your selection type of questions, your multiple choice, your matching that we've just talked about. True false is going to be the next little item that we'll look at. Once you know what you want to assess, what you want to test, the format you choose ought to become clear. Whether multiple choice or matching or true false would get it done for you. And so up to now we know that multiple choice and matching are really good for assessing knowledge. So they're very flexible and very appropriate for a lot of the stuff that you and I teach. Okay, so this wraps up chapter 9, and so we will get started on true false in the next video.